My number one piece of advice is to imagine your birth. And a fight is kind of like birth, where you can't control all the variables. You can't predict them, but you can meditate and think about how you're going to react, what decisions you're going to make if these said things happen. You can prepare your body physically, but more importantly, you can be mentally ready for it. I would fall asleep thinking about birth. I would think about, okay, the contractions are going to start. Maybe they'll start at night. Maybe I'll get woken up by them. Maybe I will be at work. I don't plan on this is how it's going to happen. I would fall asleep dreaming about, okay, this is what I'm going to do if this happens. And then this would happen. And so then I just fall asleep with it on my mind and with the feeling of excitement, because it is so exciting and so fun.
Getting pregnant and giving birth are two of the most exciting things you can ever hope to experience in this life. The moment you think you could be pregnant, you're frantically searching for all the best information, which is why you're here today. I'm Stephanie King, and with my many years of experience as a professional childbirth educator, doula, and lover of all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, I'm here to make preparing for your birth enjoyable, empowering, and totally easy. Each week, I'll cover different topics, interview professionals, and get into the nitty-gritty birth stories from mamas just like you. And when you're ready for more, you can join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I take you step by step through exactly how to prepare your mind, body, spirit, and partner for a birth you love. So let's get started. Welcome back to the podcast this week, you guys. I have another birth story with me, and I'm lucky enough to know Madie in person. So we connected actually after she took my birth course, kind of through a friend. It's been a neat experience, neat to see her over the years and get to know her a little bit, know her on a more personal level. This is my favorite part of what I do when I get to kind of connect with everybody. So with that, Madie, will you say hi to everybody, kind of introduce yourself, your family, and then let's dive in.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Madie. I have two boys. One's 4 and one is turning 1 next week. And then I live in Utah with my husband. I am a dog trainer, but then I'm a professional fighter as well. And so, I'm hoping to share some things from how fighting has helped me give birth as well.
I know. I think that's such an interesting part of your story, because I guarantee I probably will never interview another mom that this is part of their story. And I think it's so neat because, yes, there has to be, I can only imagine, the mental, physical, emotional component that goes into fighting, which I have never done, obviously, but I would imagine that kind of discipline and stuff would absolutely carry over. So I'm excited for everybody to hear that too. And just kind of so everyone knows, we actually did this interview. I just looked, it was like 4 months ago. For whatever reason, it didn't totally upload. And so we get to do it again. But I purposely didn't I didn't look at the transcript. I didn't read anything. I'm like, this is going to be fresh in my brain and your brain, right? Yeah. We're just going to try one more time. So thank you for being here again. I'm so excited for that. But yeah, let's kind of dive into, maybe let's start with your pregnancy. And I know we're talking about your most recent birth, but obviously relating the two and kind of what that was like and boys and girls and all that. Tell me a little bit about your pregnancy.
Yeah. So this most recent pregnancy was really good. We didn't have to try for very long, which was very different from our first pregnancy. That was really hard. But I have mild pregnancies. I mean, pregnancy is hard. It is I know some women really enjoy being pregnant. I don't love it. I mean, I enjoy the aspects of it, but it's not my favorite thing. I love birth, but pregnancy is it's long for me. And something else that changes when I'm pregnant is that I can't work out. And so it's not just, obviously, the fighting I need to stop. I can't be wrestling and doing kickboxing and Muay Thai, things like that. But my body is very different, where I'm very fatigued if I work out otherwise, weightlifting, anything like that, which is very different for some women. They're able to work out all the time, and I love that for them. I have a friend that still wakes up at her 5 o'clock and goes. I cannot do that while I'm pregnant. My body afterwards, I feel great right after, but then for about 2 days afterwards, I am exhausted and I can't do care tasks for the children that I have. And it's just, I stick to more walking and staying active, but I'm not able to be very physical.
Yeah.
So, and
And that
that's
was
something,
the same for both of your pregnancies?
both of them. I wasn't able to train my body as hard as I would have liked. And I had to kind of give myself some grace for that, because I knew that I could always pick it up later, which can be hard, but I knew that there was a time and season for my body to relax and be able to create a human life inside of me. And I was okay taking that break and being able to be rejuvenated afterwards. So,
Yeah. I love to hear that, because I think that would be hard mentally to let go of that or not be frustrated or angry with it, but instead find a place of peace and grace for yourself. I think that's really powerful and wonderful to hear. How about pregnancy symptoms? Did you have any like nausea? Did anything stand out to you other than the fatigue kind of that you mentioned?
I have aversions to food, um, and some nausea. I had some morning sickness, but not a ton. But yeah, it's mostly the fatigue, and uh, also I feel like mentally I have a shorter fuse, which isn't talked about a lot, but uh, I have to, it takes more of an effort to remind myself to have more patience with myself and with other things, because I'm not able to take certain medications during pregnancy. And so it takes a lot more effort to be patient, mostly with myself.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's something that I work through.
Okay. How about your providers? Can we kind of talk about, and if that changed, first pregnancy, second pregnancy, what kind of provider did you have? Where were you planning to give birth? All of that.
So I had midwives. From the start, I felt strongly that I wanted to use a midwife. I didn't know a ton about the difference between an OB and a midwife the first time around, but I ended up loving my midwife the first time, and she retired before I could before uh, before I had my second. And so when I was pregnant with Cooper, that's when I went to. It was within the same clinic, but I had a second provider, and both midwives, and I. That's the way I'll go from now on, for
Yeah.
sure.
I love that. And so, did you interview when you were looking for the second provider? How did you find them? I guess I have the same question for the first, but then since you've been around the block once, I wonder
Yeah.
what that looked like for you looking for another.
So for the second time, I really liked the clinic that I was in. I liked how close it was. I liked having an ultrasound every appointment. That was part of their whole deal, was that you got an ultrasound every appointment. And so I liked that. And I'm not one to be pushed around medically. I know what I want. I know now. That wasn't the case before. I thought that you were pretty much assigned a doctor, and that's who you had. That's was kind of my understanding before I started listening to your podcast. And so when I started to understand that I could have my birth my way, I I didn't interview a lot of women. Um, in fact, I didn't interview any at first, even the second time around. I just went to the first clinic, and then I went with her. But at about 20 weeks, I started getting some second guessing if I wanted to stay with her because of some of the things that she had said. And not anything crazy. It was just that I felt like everything that I brought up, she'd be like, well, you can do it that way, or you don't have to. It wasn't, let's go with your plan. It was, I think one of the most defining things was I said, I'd like to do this unmedicated because that's how I did it before. And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I want that experience again. She goes, well, it's not a lifetime membership. You don't have to do it. It's like, like, I understand like that you're saying that to women that did it unmedicated and maybe didn't love it, but I just said that I loved it.
Right.
And so that's where at 20 weeks, some comments like that had resurfaced. And so I started interviewing and looking at different providers. And in the end, I felt strongly that I should stay with the one that I had. So, but yeah, so that's kind of, I did that interview process kind of in the middle instead of at the beginning.
Yeah, I think there's no bad time to do it. And that's kind of, you said what I just think is like so perfect for every mom to hear. You do the interviews no matter what, because it's going to tell you one of two things. You're with the wrong provider or you're with the right provider. And so I love that that was like, okay, no, like, yeah, we don't agree on everything, but confirmed this is who I want to be at my birth. And this is the best path for me. And I love that. So I'm really glad you shared that. Any challenges that you had throughout your pregnancy as you got kind of closer to the end there that you had to deal with your provider on any of that?
The biggest issue that I had was, I mean, during my pregnancies, I gained a lot of weight. And that's just something that I know about my body. And that's something that my provider had kind of used against me. She's like, well, I feel like you're gaining a lot of weight. And it was the same amount that I had, like, to the dot that I had gained for my first. So I wasn't very concerned. And I'm a lean person to begin with. And so gaining that much weight wasn't as scary to me because it was like, okay, well, I'm lean and then it wasn't ever unhealthy. It was just the amount that I gained was concerning to her because she hadn't experienced that, without concerns like gestational diabetes, which I didn't have. And so that's the only hiccup there. But yeah.
Okay. How about your birth partner? Let's talk about your husband.
He's amazing. I love, so Kaz is my husband and he is willing to do anything that I ask him to do. And my big thing in birth is that I kind of like to do it alone, which is, I feel like, a little bit more uncommon. I like to get into labor land and I like to just be there. And so the first time when we were laboring, the first time around, he was doing a lot of counter pressure and doing so good. But then sometimes the counter pressure would get uncomfortable after a little bit. And so then I'd have to come out of labor land to then tell him and then try and get back into it. And so the second time around, I said, I'll let you know if I need you. But he was there. His role in birth for us is that he is my advocate, that he knows the birth plan. He's well versed in it. He will tell the providers what I want. He will ask the questions so that I don't have to come out of labor land and I can just be there. And so that's kind of his role in our birthing space.
Yeah, and he apparently knows it and loves it, right?
Yes. Yeah. He says it's very boring for a while because it is just me in labor land, but
Sure. Did he take the course with you? What kind of preparation did you guys do together?
yeah, so the first time around we took the course together and I would watch it and then I would go through and say, hey, I want you to, and we would go and review it together and at the portions that I thought that he needed. Because he was also in school full-time and working full-time. And so I would watch it and then I would go back and kind of earmark what I wanted him to review with me. And so then we printed out our birth plan, our birth map, and did it that way. So.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about your preparation. Now, you talked about, I want to hear those kind of like daily things, the weekly things. Like, what did you really do to prepare yourself? And how was it different from the first to the second? Did you find that there was more mental preparation or more physical preparation? I want to hear about that. But I know you talked about, okay, you were tired. You did some walking and things like that. So kind of walk me through that. And then I want to hear about your nutrition and those daily things too.
Yeah. Yeah. So walking helped me more in both mentally and physically. It felt like I was able to do something. And the first time around, it gave me a chance to feel, I would get Braxton Hicks when I would walk a lot. And so I was like, okay, that's what these are. The second time around, it was a way for me to get good exercise and with my 3-year-old at the time. And so it was good. Like we were out in fresh air. We were getting the things, I call the micro things that you need, right? So like you need exercise, you need nutrition, you need meditation, but the small, like the micro things are like being outside, like doing things that way. And so that's what I felt like made a difference for me, is that I was able to ponder on the things as I walked, and kind of imagine birth as I walked.
Yeah, I like that. I find that walking, even for myself now, is very much meditative. that way. It's like, oh, I can kind of work through the things that have been going through my mind or the issues I had during the day. And it kind of like slows everything down and gives me a deeper perspective. So I love that.
Yeah. The fighting part of it that kind of works that element into it is that a lot of your fight is mental. So you train and you train. So when you fight, there's usually between 8 and 10 weeks of fight camp is what it's called. And so I always equate birth when the guys ask me about it. I'm like, birth is a 9-month fight camp. That's what it is, because you're constantly thinking about it. It's on your mind. You are the choices that you make during the day, you are thinking about them, how they're affecting your pregnancy, how they're affecting your baby. And same thing, like when you're in a fight camp, everything you do daily, that's on your mind. It's okay. I am at work. I've got to make sure that I'm drinking enough water so that I can train well tonight, all these things. And it's the same with birth and pregnancy is, okay, I've got to walk so that I can have a clear mind, so that I need to make sure I'm drinking water. I need to, because it kind of all leads up to this event. And so part of my preparation that way is that, and my number one piece of advice is to imagine your birth. And a fight is kind of like birth, where you can't control all the variables. You can't predict them, but you can meditate and think about how you're going to react, what decisions you're going to make if these said things happen. You can prepare your body physically, but more importantly, you can be mentally ready for it. And so that's a lot of my preparation, is that I would take a bath at night and I would listen to your podcast, and I would watch all these birth, I go on YouTube and find birth stories as well and watch women give birth. And then I would go and lay down in bed, and I would fall asleep thinking about birth. I would think about, okay, the contractions are going to start, maybe. And so one night I would think, okay, maybe they'll start at night. Maybe I'll get woken up by then. Maybe I will be at work, because my first birth, my water broke. And so maybe I'll be at work, my water will break again. And so I don't plan on, this is how it's going to happen. I would fall asleep dreaming about, okay, this is what I'm going to do if this happens. And then this would happen. And so then I just fall asleep with it on my mind and with the feeling of excitement, because it is so exciting and so fun.
Yeah. You're like me, you love the birth part. That's
Yes.
Yes, the challenge. Bring it on.
Yes. It is. It's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so fun though. Okay. Were there you kind of talked about meditation too. Was that like your form of meditation, or did you do other things like listening to any meditation tracks or practicing relaxation with your husband? Like, what did that look like for you?
I think I wouldn't listen to meditation tracks necessarily. I would either think of the birth in a positive way, or I would, and while I walked or while I was falling asleep, but also I would I would practice labor breathing. I do my counting and my breaths just as I was taking naps, or as any time that I had downtime with my brain. I just lay down and practice the breathing and just the relaxation and honestly think of my birth, and because I was so excited, and I'd ponder on my previous birth.
Okay, well, let's dive in. I want to hear about it. Tell me, I'd love to hear if you had any appointments like really close to when you gave birth, and kind of what your stats and all that were, if you knew them, if you chose to have vaginal exams, that kind of stuff. And then let's go into the birth.
Yeah. So I liked the vaginal exams. I liked knowing. There is an element to it that makes it hard, that especially being the second time around, at the 37 weeks, I had given birth for my first baby. And so the problem is that throughout all of my pregnancy, people would ask me that, well, when was your first one born? And my mom had gone early with all of her babies. And so even though I knew that I really should be projecting, like, the guesstimated due date was supposed to be like January 29th. And I was like, I need to be thinking of it as Valentine's Day. Like, for my mental, like, health, I need to not think January 29th. And because I also knew that my brain was going to think 3 weeks prior, because my first baby was early. And so I felt like that's what I needed to do, but it was very hard whenever I talked to people and they're like, oh, well, you'll go early. You'll go early. And so then everyone's saying this to me. And I'm like, that's not helpful, but also I kind of am hoping that. And so when I went in and I did vaginal exams the first time, my first pregnancy, then on the second one, I felt like I needed that. I needed to know where I was at because I was trying to compare and contrast, which I knew I shouldn't for the waiting game, but I couldn't resist. I was like, I need to know. And so, and it was hard because I was at the similar station, similar dilation as the first time. So at 37 weeks, I was already 3.5 centimeters dilated, which is the exact, it was like mirrored the same. And so then that whole week I was irritated because I felt like, well, that's when Chip came. That's been my first one. And so at my 38-week appointment, I went into it thinking, if I'm dilated more, and if she asks me if I'd like a membrane sweep, I will say yes. But if she does not ask me, I'm going to just leave it alone. And so I went into it, and she did. She asked if I wanted it, and I said yes. And I was at like a 4.5 now. And for my mental fortitude, I had the membrane sweep so that I could feel like I was doing something actively that was less invasive, like induction. And so that's the choice that I made. And then I went home, and my husband and I walked around Costco for like 2 hours because it was January. And I ended up going into labor that night. So that's kind of what that appointment looked like the day before.
Awesome.
It's hard though, because I felt like I'd listened to all of your podcasts and that baby comes when they're ready. But yeah, so I'd felt some guilt with getting the membrane sweep because I knew that if you started interventions, it's a higher chance of having more interventions later. But I also felt like I couldn't continue to be a good mom to my oldest if I had this weight of this upcoming event that I had been in anticipation for the last 9 months. And so I had decided to do the membrane sweep. And so I had to learn to not feel guilty for making a decision that is best for mom, because I am a firm believer that parenting is what's best for mom, because if mom isn't taken care of, then no one can be taken care of. So that's my membrane sweep experience.
I love it. Okay, so you have the membrane sweep, and then when did you start having your first contractions? And then let's kind of dive into the birth.
I had strong Braxton Hicks contractions and throughout the day. I mean, we'd been walking at Costco for a few hours. But I also had gotten a treadmill, for like a walking treadmill. And what I'd done is I would walk with one foot on and then one foot off. So it was kind of curb walking.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
In my house. And so I'd walk on and then walk off and switch sides. And I did that while I watched Psych for a few hours. And so I felt like I was feeling Braxton Hicks contractions, but they weren't like anything crazy. But I also didn't know if those were real real contractions because with my first birth, my contractions felt like strong Braxton Hicks, but didn't like, I could talk through them, and they were like that and consistent for a long time before they got actually intense. Even with Pitocin for my first birth, they gave it to me because my water had broken and they wanted to hurry it along a little bit more. And they still didn't feel crazy until after my water had broken, or until my bag of water was completely broken. And so I didn't know if I was having real contractions or if these were Braxton Hicks, and so that was a little frustrating for me because I didn't know if I just had a really high pain tolerance or if the membrane sweep just didn't work. And so it doesn't all the time. My sister had a few, and they didn't send her into labor. And so I was just like, okay, I'm just going to walk. And I had went to Smith's, and I was walking around Smith's and got a little concoction of midwife's brew and was collecting all of those items to put that together. And then I grabbed a bag of like really spicy Takis and went home and was eating dates and Takis and watching Psych while I walked on my treadmill.
I love this so much.
And I don't remember where my husband took my boys, but I just said, I need them out. Or Chip at the time was like, you guys go do something. I need to be alone in my
with my talkies. Get out.
Yeah. So that's what I did. And then I scheduled a prenatal massage, and then I went to bed. And then at 12:17, I woke up and I thought I was in transition. Wow. Because my contractions were on top of each other. They weren't like your normal 1 minute, every 3 minutes. They were on top of each other from 3:17. And I looked at my tracker from 12:17 to 12:30. They were just, I'd get like 10 seconds before the next one started.
Wow.
And so I was like, maybe I just slept through my labor and now I'm in transition. So I went and got Kaz and woke him up, and we all went to the hospital. And as we were getting loaded up, then they started slowing down. They started getting to that. I'd have it for a minute, then I'd have a break and in between. But it was so cute. On our way to the hospital, I was breathing. I was doing my labor breathing, and my little boy goes, "Mommy, are you okay?" And he was asking me, he's like, "Why do you need to calm down?" Because that's what we do when we're frustrated, is we take a breath. It's like, "Are you frustrated?" He's like, "No, buddy, I'm not." But he was very excited. He had been in anticipation. And so he was excited when we pulled up to the emergency room and saw the helicopter on the helicopter pad. He was just like, birth was so fun for him. He got to wake up in the middle of the night and get his jammies on, like have his jammies on. And then when we got to the hospital, it was so fun because I had declined a wheelchair going up there. I was like, walking is good for labor. I just want to walk up to labor and delivery. This is fine. And then a contraction hit, and they're like, "We're going to bring you new." But anyways. And so I accepted it because they brought it for me. And I sat down, and my 4-year-old sat on my lap. And it was kind of the end of a chapter because he had been my little buddy, my only little buddy for so long. And the last time that I sat in a wheelchair with him was when I was being wheeled from the delivery room to the postpartum unit. And so it was like the beginning of a chapter was him and me in this wheelchair. And then the end of the chapter was him and me going up to have his little brother. And so it was so fun to have him in my arms. I mean, I had my belly, but like I'm holding on to this now 3-year-old who is talking and this life that we've built together. And I was able to just reflect just for a few minutes as we rode up to labor and delivery. So that was a very special moment for us before my friend came and got him. So
yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah. Then once we got into the delivery room, it was a little bit different because it was night with Chip, it was like 6 a.m. that we went in. And so it was a lot quieter. It was, lights were very low. And I was able to just kind of go crawl in the bed and just try and get to labor land. And because I knew that, my husband going into it, he knows that I want to be in labor land. He knows that, well, this happened just with my first pregnancy or my first birth before I knew that I could do it, like before I had experienced it, is that if I ask for an epidural, our rule is that he asks me 3 times if I'm sure. And I have to say I'm sure all 3 times, just because I knew that wave would pass. And so for our first birth, I asked 2 different times for an epidural, and he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes." And then by the second him asking if I was positive, that I would say no, because it would pass. And that was before I learned how to get into labor land and in that meditation. And so I didn't ask him the second or for this second birth, but I still felt like it was a good way for him to be involved and to make me feel like I was heard, and that that's an option for me, but that he's making sure that I'm hitting the goals that I wanted to hit without being too pushy and letting me make those decisions. And so he knew that his job was to verify my wants based on our birth map, to advocate for me with the nurses, and to make sure that they were doing what I had planned in my birth map, and for him to be there for me when I asked him to be. And so that's kind of his role in our birth space. But I was able to get into labor land, but I was a lot more nauseous this time, like in the birthing space. And so they actually brought in this little essential oils patch, and it helped me a lot. But before then, I'd thrown up all of the fun things that I'd eaten the night before.
That's funny, because when you were talking about talkies and dates, that's all I could think is like, I wonder if if that all came up.
It did.
That's the worst.
So it was, and Kaz was like running around. We couldn't find like the little bags, and so he like just brought me this giant garbage can.
Nice.
And I'm like, it works. But once I got the little nauseous thing, it actually calmed it a lot. I was surprised at how well it worked. And so then I was able to kind of drift off. But I asked for just intermittent monitoring. And they did that for a while, but then because my contractions were ramping up really fast, he wasn't getting a rest in between. And so they ended up strapping it to me, and I was okay with that. But then at one point they said, well, we're going to try a different position. And I have a very specific position that I'd like to be in birth that I feel comfortable and I'm able to drift. But they said, let's just try and have you be like leaned up against the back on your hands, kind of like on your hands and knees, but like on the edge of the bed. And I did that, and immediately I remember getting to that point, putting my hand down, like to lay my head down, and saying, nope. It was not comfortable for me. And so I laid back down, and I just laid to the other side of, and they were happy with that. But I just remember thinking that there was a lot of back labor, and for this one, which wasn't the case for my first one. And I remember thinking, he's not in the right position yet. Like all of my babies from like 20 weeks on, their head is down and they like, just, I don't know if it's the way my uterus is or the way that my boys have large heads. I don't know if that's what it is, but they sit with their heads down. They don't ever flop around. They always sit head down for 20 weeks. Like that's just where they're comfortable in there. And so I knew that he was head down, but I didn't know, like, he wasn't quite right just yet. And so I went off and was in labor land for a bit. And so that I got into the hospital at 1. And then let's see, I've got it written down here in my birth book. And so at 3:30, I had a cervical check, and I was at 7. I was at a 7. And then at 5:10, I had another cervical check, and I was only to 7.5. And I felt like I needed to get him to be adjusted. I needed to do something. And I love water. I take baths every night to get relaxed. And so I went in to the bathroom and got in the shower and had Kaz use the shower head to give me a massage. And I went through one contraction there, and it was very uncomfortable. And I also had bloody show, which was different than the first time, which was a little alarming, right? Even though you know that can happen, that bloody show is a thing, it is still alarming. It was for me, at least. And so I got back in the bed, and at 5:20, I looked at the clock. I was like, okay, I was out for 10 minutes. Great. And I got back in the bed, got in my position that I like. And they came in so that was 5:20. At 6, they came in and did a cervical check, and I was at 9.5. And so that little movement, the shower, just adjusting, he was able to figure it out and get to where he needed to be. And so I was feeling exhausted. And so I had them come in and break my bag of waters. And if I would have been cognizant enough to realize that I was at a 9.5, I would have said to not break my waters, because I would love to have a baby born in call. I think that's so cool. And I'm curious what your thoughts are if more babies would be born in the call if we didn't break water so much.
Yeah, I actually do think that more of them would be. Absolutely. I think a lot of the time, and I understand why, a lot of the time, especially in hospital settings, the bag of waters is broken for convenience of the provider, right? Because if a baby is coming out and their face is right there, like the splash, really, that's a real thing. And they will say like, well, we can keep it intact, but for the sake of my face or whatever. And a lot of times moms are fine with that. And then, and some providers don't say that at all, and some don't care. And that's, not a big thing. But I do think if nothing else, you would have a lot less manual, breaking of the bag of waters for sure. It's really common for a bag of waters to break on the way out anyways. That's just the common time for it to happen. And I think it's because you've got that cushion and baby's pushing down and pushing through, and then it doesn't need it anymore. Like we're here, there's the burst, just the pressure of everything. But then you have the babies that can be born and call, whether that's in the water or out of the water. So my third baby, I don't know if you remember that. My third baby was born and call. But they were born, my eyes were completely shut. I was like, doing my thing, and I was like really focused on whatever. And we didn't have pictures of it because my doula was there. Like everybody was like hands on, but I guess he was born in his bag of waters, and then it broke shortly after. So like by the time I saw him, he was just baby, but other people got to see it. And I thought that was kind of cool.
That was really neat. Yeah. That push of water makes sense. Like, helping baby come out and to not fatigue mom so much.
Yeah. So you felt a little fatigued? Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So that's why I asked, because they'd offered a lot earlier. They said, well, we can break your bag of waters to make it go faster. And that's when I said, no, I'll just go get in the shower instead, to try and adjust him, because I wasn't going to sit there and say, well, I feel like he's not in the right position and I need to do this. I was just like, I'm doing what I feel is best. And from the knowledge that Stephanie has given me, I'm going to do what I'm going to do it. And you guys are just along for the ride.
You know what? Which is a good point for what you're talking about, because if baby's not in a great position, granted, like at that point, yes, they're pretty low and like lodged in there. But if they're not in a good position, you want them to have all the freedom of movement that they can have too. And if you break that bag of waters, it can speed it up, but it can kind of like lodge them into that spot because they run out of that space to wiggle and move. Right. And so I think that was so wise of you to be like, I'm just going to get up and move her. And look what happened 40 minutes later, this huge.
Yes.
So awesome.
Yeah. And it was a very like, I don't know. It was a testimony to me of how much women truly do know their bodies. And that also requires a lot of education. That's why whenever someone's pregnant, I like, do Stephanie's course, please. Because you don't know what you don't know, but knowing, and when you having someone point out the things in your life that can, and saying, hey, you've had a lot of back pain this pregnancy, or you're having a lot of back labor. This could be that, where it's just not in your provider's mind because that's not what they're trained to do. And so I always promoted. But yeah, so I wish I would have, like, I think at that point I was in transition. So I was so focused on just like surviving and doing what my baby needed that I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm at a 9.5. I should actually just say, okay, we don't need to break the bag of waters. But they were broken, and then at 6:15 is when I was complete, and I started pushing, and he was born at 6:22.
Wow.
And so both of my births, I was very blessed to have very little pushing. And I remember the first time my body was just doing it. And as I was laying there for my firstborn, my body just started pushing. And the nurse was like, well, hold on. I was like, nope. I'm not going to stop my body from doing what it needs to do. And so she's like, well, then your midwife's not here yet. She's almost here. I'm like, great. She can say hi after. And so I just started pushing, and the OB on call came in and pulled the bed apart, right? Just started pulling everything apart, and I'm already pushing. And then my midwife came in and she did some massage and helped me with my firstborn. The reason I mentioned the bed pulling apart is because that was my only experience with an OB, and him like coming in and just kind of muscling through and pulling stuff apart how he wanted it, which I get it. Like, I want my provider to be comfortable and be able to get to my baby. But then for my second, I was laying there, and my body didn't do it automatically, but I could feel my body saying, hey, it's time to push. And so I started to push. And so my midwife was sitting there and just sitting on her stool in the corner. And as I was laying there, and my husband was a little irritated because his experience was that OB coming in and muscling it in. And so he's like, why isn't she doing anything? Like, my wife is obviously starting to, like, I was starting to get more vocal. And so he was like, come on, like, help her out here. And so, but the second that I went from like on my side to like flipping over and pushing, she like was there and like slid her little cloth underneath that had all of her tools. And she just sat there and didn't pull the bed apart, didn't do anything like that, just was there, just catch the baby. And so it was a very different experience, which was interesting to me, of how it was handled. And, from before, having all of these people come in and be pulling things apart and doing it really quick, to my midwife just sitting there, he said she was twiddling her thumbs, just waiting for me to be ready and letting me call the shots. And so it was an interesting flip there. So yeah, that's how he came into this world, and which is also interesting because my firstborn is very go, very in it, wants to figure things out. and my second is very chill. And just I just think it's interesting that my pregnancies and my births kind of showed how their personalities were. It just was on par for each of them. So, but yeah, that's how he got here.
I love it. Do you remember, do you have their like heights and weights and all of that?
Yeah. So, for my youngest, he was bigger than my first, and he was also born on the wolf moon. He was on a full moon, which is interesting to me. That was fun. He was 7 pounds 12 ounces, and he was 21 inches long.
Oh, sweet.
So
yeah.
And then my first was just a little bit smaller, but my husband's not a small guy. He was 9 pounds and 23 inches long.
Wow,
when he was,
that's big. Yeah.
And so, we were expecting like big babies, but my mom had small babies, so I think it just it kind of balanced itself out.
Yeah, well, and having them just a couple of weeks earlier too can definitely, because they say at the end it's a pound a week, right? So definitely be a bigger baby if you went all the way. But what a neat story. And I love that you have that contrast too. I do. And almost I love your husband's experience with it as well, because it is kind of like you feel like they should be doing something, but sometimes what they should be doing is absolutely nothing, just kind of that lifeguard approach. We're just watching and waiting. I'm here if you need anything, but your body is capable of doing it. And I think that's a really neat thing to have. But yeah. Okay. Will you answer for me real quick? So I've been asking moms specifically about the birth course. Tell me a little bit about the My Essential Birth Course, how it prepared you, how it feel like it changed you or made things better for you and your birth partner. What was your experience with that?
Yeah. So I loved it because it changed my perspective on birth. Because before, with my first, so I did it with my first, and then I just kind of reviewed my notes and things for my second. But before I did it, I was terrified of birth because I didn't understand. Like, I was like, okay, what is active labor? When women say they're in labor for 48 hours, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're pushing for 48 hours? Does that mean, like, what are we talking about here? And so there's this big ambiguous umbrella of, okay, you're going to go give birth, but we're not going to actually tell you what that means. And so I felt like I was just being put on this roller coaster. And I also do not like needles. And so I couldn't even think about an epidural without like getting queasy. And so I was like, I thought that you either had to give birth at home with no intervention or at a hospital being told what to do. That was my understanding. And so my dream birth before I did the birth course was to have a baby in the car so I didn't have to deal with any of it. That was my dream birth before I did the birth course. And then what it gave me is, as I was doing it, I was understanding, okay, I know I can follow along. And better yet, I can be the leader in this thing. I can understand where my body's at. I can understand what is going to happen next. It's not just going to be, it's like the movies. Well, you can't have food now because you're too far along, or you can't have the epidural now because you're too far along. Okay, well, what my brain was thinking, when is that point? And I just couldn't understand. And so having the birth course show me what to do, show me my options, having it be any way that I wanted. If I needed an epidural, if I wanted to do unmedicated, if I wanted to have more intervention, if I needed to go into a C-section, I was going to be able to make that decision because I would know where my body was at and what it was doing when. And so the birth course was the biggest gift to myself that has influenced not only the way that I see my body and my providers, but it's influenced me as a mom. because I was able to start my mom journey feeling like I was the leader. So that's what the birth course has done for me, and that I hope it does for everyone every pregnant mom that I run into. I'm like, you need this. I will give it to you for your baby shower, and I will do it early. I will buy that for you.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
So,
Okay. And then before we go, I have to ask you your best advice for moms and best advice for dads.
best advice for moms is to do what's best for you, to understand your body, to understand that if you are wanting to do it unmedicated, amazing. If you want to do it unmedicated and your map doesn't take you that route, that it's okay. That Stephanie's got you. She'll show you how to go through and manage that. And then my advice for dads is a little bit different than what I usually. Well, sorry. My advice for moms is to imagine your birth. To, as you go to sleep at night, to walk through your map, to go through and every situation, the good, the tough situations, walk through it and be excited and mentally prepare yourself in a way that, like you would at a sporting event, like you would anything, be excited. And think about it often because it's a happy event. And then for dads is a little bit different because where my husband and I, he doesn't do a whole lot in the birthing space. It's really boring for him because he just has to sit and just talk to nurses. Is that don't let moms see the newborn poop. Be on it. Like, mom is in recovery. So when you're in the hospital or when you're at home, be on it for those, especially those first few days. Baby's crying, like, be actively engaged those first few days, because that's my husband's favorite thing is he loves to just pamper me and the baby and make sure that we're taken care of, because he knows that in a few days he's going to go back to work and that I'm going to be alone for a bit. And so that's his big role in our birthing experiences, that is postpartum. He is on it. And so that's what I recommend for dads is don't let mom see the black tar poop, because just be on it.
I love that. Yeah, I haven't heard that one on here before. So that's solid. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Madie, for doing this twice. I really appreciate you and your birth story. And I'm excited that everyone's going to get to hear it soon. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Okay. Well, thank you so much for letting me come on a second time.
You're awesome for being here. Yes.
If you loved what you heard today, the very best way to support this podcast and help other moms to find it is to leave a quick review. I read one at the beginning of the episodes, and I would love for yours to be next. And if you're ready for even more pregnancy, birth, and postpartum goodness, come join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I will hold your hand and walk you through pregnancy and birth step by step so you're totally prepared for a birth you'll love. See you next week.